It's on, right? Okay, so can you see me in the video? Alright, so social psych. So if you're asked a question on, like, you might be given a scenario like, scientists or psychologists are trying to study how women versus men react differently to blah, 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 blah. That's going to be social psych. So anything that focuses on social behavior, the way people act in a certain situation, it's probably going to be social psych. It can overlap with behaviorism because behaviorism, you're looking at observable actions. But if social psych is on there as opposed to like cognitive psych or psychoanalytic, or like developmental psych or some other kind of psychology or educational, it's going to be social psych. Is that clear? Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's get started. These are basically all the things we're going to cover. Okay, so how we perceive others. If someone is good looking, what characteristics do we associate with them? Kind, friendly, warm, intelligent. Okay, so good looking people, friendly, warm, intelligent. If they have baby face features, honest, good. Okay, stereotype threat. Who can tell me what that was?
When people like for example, they say, oh, women, they don't get high scores, and when they're on the test, they kind of think, oh, I'm not going to get a high score.
Exactly. Okay, so let's say people are taking a test, and you know ahead of time that your particular group, whether it's an ethnicity or a gender, performs poorly on the test. It's going to influence you, and you're going to perform poorly on the test. Okay, so that means if two people take a test, one, let's say the SAT, one is African American and one is white, and they score the same. According to this theory, who is actually better and smarter? No, not the white person. If they score the same, so the question would be, it was in one of the videos we saw, who actually would have maybe scored higher? The person who's African American, because he or she was influenced by stereotype threat. Okay, so just know that. Okay, social schemas. So remember, this is when you have a preconceived idea of how something's supposed to be or how people are supposed to behave, and then it influences your perception. So who can give me an example? What do you think?
Well, I can probably say, you could try this one.
So one scenario would be, remember that I told you guys about the park example, right? Where they had, wasn't that on your test? Where they had pictures of people in the park, and then it showed, or maybe they watched a video and the male or the female was actually the aggressor, but then they showed stuff. Did I show you guys that one? Okay. And then they gave them like other pictures in between, and when they asked them to recall the situation, did they say that the female was the aggressor? No, they said the male was, because it fits with their social schema. That's what they're used to seeing. Okay? Also, maybe you read a couple like biographies of people, and one of them is described as nerdy or whatever, and then the other one is described as popular, and then when you're asked to determine who, let's see, who is more into music, hip-hop music, you assume, you say that it's the popular one instead of the nerdy one because that's kind of what you associate more, even though it may have been the opposite way. Okay, so that's a social schema. A regular schema, remember, schemas are just when you have preconceived ideas and they influence the way you think, okay? So it's kind of like your expectations affect your perception, right? So like a regular schema would be the ones where you're shown a picture of a doctor's office, and you're asked, and you're told to look at it for a few seconds, and then they take it away and they ask you what was in there, and you say things like, oh, a stethoscope, even though there may have not been a stethoscope. And then let's say there was like a burrito sitting on the, I don't know, something, You don't recall that because you're not used to seeing that at a doctor's office. So again, our expectations affect what we see. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Stereotyping. So give me an example of a stereotype. Yeah.
Blonde people are dumb.
Right. Okay, so like the dumb blonde thing, so you assume just because someone's blonde, just because he or she is part of that group, right, Thomas? That, you know, they might be dumb, even though we know clearly that's not the case. All right. Okay, illusory correlation, you may have forgotten this. So when you overestimate the amount of times you've seen something that sort of prove your stereotype true. So going back to the blonde example, oh, I've met like, 100 blondes that are dumb and I've only met Thomas that isn't, Or let's say it's like, Asians and math, okay? Oh, I've like never met an Asian that's not good at math. Maybe one time, even though you've actually met, 5. Okay? So that's illusory correlation. It's tough because the name of it doesn't really, I don't know, it's hard to connect the name of it with what it means. So you guys want to, is there anything you could think of that'll help with that? Or yeah.
You have the illusion that you've met 100 Asians.
Oh, that's good. Perfect. Okay. So you have the illusion that you've met, 100 smart math Asians and only 2 that are not, but that's not the case. Perfect. Okay. Do you want me to wait? Is anyone taking notes, or you guys are taking notes? Some of you, right? Okay. So stereotype threat we just talked about. Again, when you know that you're a member of a group that doesn't perform well on something, that influences your performance, okay? And it's basically what's going on is like, it's causing you anxiety, and it's like any sport or any test, any task, if you feel like you're not going to do well, it's going to influence you and you're probably not going to do well. It's kind of like mind over matter. So, it makes sense that would happen. Okay, discrimination versus prejudice. What's the difference? Yes?
Discrimination is an action, and prejudice is just like an attitude you have.
Exactly. So discrimination is an action, and prejudice is an attitude. So I'll give you an example. You're going to tell me if it's discrimination or if it's prejudice, okay? You believe that all people of a certain race or culture are lazy. Prejudice, okay? You don't hire someone because he's part of that discrimination, okay? Can you be prejudiced and not discriminate? Who can give me an example?
Like a boss tells his employee not to hire any women, and that particular person may have nothing against women, but because his boss told them to do it.
Okay, so that's showing discrimination but not being prejudiced,
yeah.
Right? Okay, and what about the other way around? Being prejudiced but not showing discrimination?
You don't really like Asians, but you hire them anyway. Is that?
No, you're still doing. Or wait. Oh no, you're right. Yeah, you are right. Sorry, confused. Yes. So if you don't really like a certain group, but you hire them anyway, you don't discriminate against them. Perfect. Sorry, Marianne. Okay. Cognitive. Show me cognitive. Hey, remember. Affective. Behavioral. What is it? Action. Behavioral is action. Okay. Oh yeah, you could do like the movie or running. Okay, sure. Running. Okay. What's an in-group and what's an out-group? Yes.
An in-group is the group of people you belong to, that you perceive to belong to, and that group is the group you don't belong to.
That's correct. And how do we view people of our in-group?
Different.
We notice their differences. Good, you guys remember. How do we view people of our out-group? They all are the same, right? And do we tend to have positive feelings toward the out-group or negative?
Negative.
Negative, good. Okay, so here we go. Okay, attributions, remember this? So these are inferences. What's an inference? When you make a guess about the causes of other people's situations or actions. So for example, remember you're driving and someone in front of you gets into an accident, and what do you say? he was drunk, or he wasn't being careful, or he was texting. Basically, it's his fault. What kind of attribution is it when you blame the person? Internal. Okay? And you're more likely to blame other people's negative situations on internal attributions. What is that called? Yeah. Good, Lizette. Fundamental attribution error. Okay, so remember that, that's a big one. Fundamental attribution error. Who could give me another example of fundamental attribution error? Remember, you're blaming someone's negative situation on an internal factor. Yes?
He failed his test because he was really lazy.
Mm-hmm. What else?
Internal?
Mm-hmm.
He failed the test because he just isn't that smart.
Mm-hmm. He failed the test because he's lazy. He failed the test because he's not smart. I like how these are all he's. Whenever it's a bad thing, he did it. What else? Internal attribution. I'll give you a scenario. You give me a cause. Okay? Let's say he tripped and fell outside in the hallway. He was clumsy. He wasn't looking where he was going. Okay? So again, that's an internal attribution. Negative event, so fundamental attribution error. Okay? Okay, his house has a foreclosure sign. Give me a fundamental attribution error. Or give me an internal attribution.
Internal attribution? He's not good with money.
Who's not good with money? I'm just repeating you guys, so in case, like, I don't know. I hope that could even hear my voice. Trying to be loud. Okay. What's an external attribution if you see a foreclosure sign?
It's external?
External. So
Oh,
external
the
is
economy's bad?
the economy's bad. Good, Olivia. So internal, you're blaming the person's like personality or traits somehow. External, you're blaming an outside situation that the person has no control over. So exactly, the economy's bad. I don't know. Maybe his wife passed away, and so his what's it called? Salary wasn't enough to pay. Okay. Are we likely to make external attributions when we see something bad happen? No. What kind of society are we? Individualistic, okay? Western societies tend to be individualistic. When we see something bad happen to someone, we tend to blame them. So fundamental attribution error happens more in what kind of culture? Individualistic. So that means which type of culture is not as prone to fundamental attribution? Collectivistic, okay? So like Japanese, Eastern cultures, Japanese maybe is getting a little more American, but Eastern cultures like Central South America, they tend to be more collectivistic. They care more about what? The groups, right? Yeah, community, what others think. Americans and Western and other individualistic cultures care more about what? Themselves. Yeah. We're selfish, I guess. Okay. Well, I hope we're not in this room.
Wait, what
Yeah.
is it called?
Collectivistic?
Oh,
Like, think of collective, when you talk about collective, you're talking about like a whole group, right? So, not communistic, no. Don't write that on the AP. Be like, what class are you in? Government. And communistic, I don't think that's a word. But you know that. Alright, self-serving bias. What is that? Look at the word self-serving. What do you think it means?
For ourselves.
Max.
When
Yeah.
we're in a bad situation, we blame others.
Yes, so it's for yourself, exactly. You want to make yourself feel better. So when you're in a bad situation, when you get a bad grade in a class, who are we going to blame?
The teacher.
The teacher, because that is what kind of attribution? External, right? Okay, what else can I blame if I got an F on a test, let's say?
The test was hard.
The test was unfair. The test was hard is iffy. The test was unfair. Okay, and let's say I got an A on the test. What am I going to blame?
Yourself.
I'm like super awesome. I studied. Okay, now remember there's stable and then there's
Stable.
yeah, stable and unstable. Okay, I was losing it for a second. Okay, so if I say I got an A on a test because I am intelligent, What is that? Stable, right? Because you're intelligent always. You're not intelligent one day and then done.